So last week we interviewed Henry Olsen, who's one of the best observers of politics I know, and people got angry at him and angry at me because he said that we're going to lose the House. The way things look, he said things are very fluid, but we thought we'd lose the House but keep the Senate, talking about the GOP. And people were angry about it, and I thought, like, what do you want him to do? Come on and lie? There is a new poll out from Scott Rasmussen, which is really disturbing. He wrote this letter. He says Scott Rasmussen is releasing data based upon the most likely voters rather than all registered voters. On the generic congressional ballot, that model shows the Democrats with a 49% to 39% advantage. The reason being is the Democrats are all telling pollsters we are going to vote, and the Republicans are not. Republicans are saying, well, maybe we'll vote, we might vote, and all this. On a race-by-race projections, currently show 210 House seats at least tilting in the Republican direction and 205 tilting toward the Democrats, with 20 seats in the toss-up category. But if the Democrats maintain a 10-point lead of people who will show up, right, they are likely to win the vast majority of toss-up races. The Rasmussen model currently shows that with a decent partisan turnout, Democrats could end up with 238 to 197 majority in the House. So that means that the battle for the government, the battle that's going to take place, is going to take place in your shoes. The people who put on the shoes won't lose. Okay, I don't want to sound like Johnny Cochran, but that's about it. If you are sitting there getting angry at Henry Olsen, but you don't vote because you don't like the Republican in your area and he's not quite Trumpy enough or whatever it is, that's how you're going to lose the government, because Trump, no matter what you think of the guy who's running, Trump needs those Republicans to keep his agenda going. And everything you're hearing, everything that's going on is about that. I mean, if the news were just the news, if the news were actually the news would be, oh my goodness, 200,000 more jobs, wages finally going up. Hey, look, ISIS dead. That would be the news if they were reporting the news. But instead, they're telling you, oh, it's crazy town in the Oval Office, and people are just so unhappy because Trump yells at them and he makes phone calls in the middle of the night. And what do you care? Why would you care about that? Are you John Kelly? No, you don't care. But they're just trying to get that base excited, the Democrat base excited, and to damp down your enthusiasm. And so they have brought on what they think is the big gun. They brought on Barack Obama. In the New York Times today, they had an op-ed, Barack Obama is back. And I thought, good, because if anybody can remind the GOP voter why he should get out and vote, it is Barack Obama. Ben Sasse, the senator, said the other day that he wakes up every morning wondering if he should still be a Republican. And David French over at the National Review said he no longer identifies as a Republican. The problem with all that is that the world isn't taking place inside your head. It takes place in reality. And in reality, there are two operational parties. There are Democrats and the Republicans. If you're not a Republican, you were voting for Democrats, and the Democrats are Barack Obama and worse. Barack Obama is now kind of a centrist among Democrats. So he comes out and gives a speech. Now, this is breaking precedent for former presidents. They do not get so political that they come out and attack the guy in the Oval Office. Why? Because they know it's a hard job. They realize it's not good for the country to have two presidents fighting with each other. But that is not reasoning with Barack Obama's ego, which had to be brought to the scene separately in a tractor trailer. All right. Obama came in first, and then his ego backed up. They backed up, and the 15 guys had to carry his ego onto the stage. He was in Anaheim, and they had a big 1,000-seat arena, and instead, like about 700 people showed up. Compare that to Donald Trump. The 700 people were all dressed as Mickey Mouse, but I don't know how that happened, but that's the way it happened. So let's listen for a minute to remind ourselves of what Barack Obama thinks about us. This is Obama talking about who we, as the opposition party, are. Cut number 6.
So neither party has had a monopoly on wisdom. Neither party has been exclusively responsible for us going backwards instead of forwards. But I have to say this, because sometimes we hear, oh, a plague on both your houses. Over the past few decades, wasn't true when Jim Edgar was a governor here in Illinois, or Jim Thompson was governor. Got a lot of good Republican friends here in Illinois, but over the past few decades, the politics of division and resentment and paranoia has unfortunately found a home in the Republican Party.
That's you, folks. Resentment, paranoia, and you can leave out everything he said before, because he's talking about decades. He says for the past few decades, years, tens of years, this has been going on. It's not the Democrats with their constant cries of victimhood, their constant cries of racism, their constant cries that they are being cheated out of things. The Supreme Court was stolen from them. Not them. It's you, because you wanted jobs instead of Barack Obama's little programs that he was enforcing on businesses that were keeping them. He actually claimed credit for the current recovery, which is hilarious. He says, remember when it started? I remember when it tried to start. I remember when the recovery tried to start after the crash in 2008, but he kept sitting on it with the regulations and that voice, so help me, just remembering that we were supposed to wait around through those long pauses to find out what he's going to say. Play some more of him, but listen to more of this Obama, because you just have to remember who he is. First of all, not only are you full of resentment and paranoia, but your president is virtually a Nazi. So play cut number 8.
We are Americans. We're supposed to stand up to bullies, not follow them. We're supposed to stand up to discrimination. And we're sure as heck supposed to stand up clearly and unequivocally to Nazi sympathizers. How hard can that be, saying that Nazis are bad?
Well, let me ask a question. How hard can it be saying that Islamists are bad? Remember, this is the man who couldn't get the words radical Islam out of his mouth. How hard? You don't see Donald Trump hanging around with terrorists and then lying about it and saying, oh, Bill Ayers, he was just a guy in the neighborhood. You don't see Donald Trump going to a church where they say, where they damn America every Sunday and then saying, yeah, I didn't actually realize that was going on. I mean, Lindsey Graham had a really good comment about this, about it wasn't what Obama said, it was what he left out. This is cut number 9.
President Obama, it's not what you're making up, it's what you're leaving out. You're leaving out the fact that your attorney, General Loretta Lynch, told the FBI director, don't call the Clinton email investigation an investigation, call it a matter. You're forgetting to tell the public that the number 4 at the Department of Justice, Bruce Orr, wife worked for Fusion GPS, which was on the payroll by the Democratic Party, to hire a foreign agent to go to get dirt on candidate Trump and Russia. You're leaving out the fact that Mr. McCabe, the number 2 guy at the FBI, is under grand jury investigation for lying. You're leaving out the fact that the director of the FBI, under your watch, Mr. Comey, actually leaked internal memos for the express purpose of getting a special counsel appointed. You're not talking much about the Page Strzok memos where they openly hated Trump in the tank for Clinton. Other than those few details, President Obama, you got it right.
Yeah, and he didn't even get it right because he also had this. This was the most galling thing about it. I just have to play this stuff to remind you why you should put on your shoes, because if you don't put on your shoes, you lose. I mean, this is the thing that they are counting on. They are counting. All of this stuff is about making the Democrats so upset. All the stuff about, his management style, and he's going to blow up North Korea because he's so out of control and all this stuff. All of it is about getting the base ginned up while you stay home because you think things are fine. Because look, you look around, you say, hey, I got a job, things are good, I don't really have to go out and vote. All of it can go away. Most presidents, accomplish everything they accomplish in the first 6 months in office. Trump has really been on a roll in the things he's done. He's been very aggressive and accomplished a lot of stuff. But Congress is always lagging behind, and you want them to start to legislate the kinds of things we want going on. So one more cut of Obama, because I got to play this one. This was the one that was most galling to me because of all the talk about how evil Trump is with the press. Think about it. Trump has done not one thing to hamper freedom of the press. And here is Obama talking about that.
It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say that we don't threaten the freedom of the press because they say things or publish stories we don't like. I complained plenty about Fox News. But you never heard me threaten to shut them down or call them enemies of the people.
He banned them from several press conferences. He tapped reporters' phones. He named James Rosen, Fox News reporter James Rosen, his Justice Department named him a criminal co-conspirator under the Espionage Act of 1917, because Rosen used a State Department contractor as a source for a story. He was also labeled a flight risk. Okay, he tapped, and Maggie Haberman, the Clinton hack, the woman who was identified in hacked Clinton emails as a friend to the campaign and is now covering the White House for the New York Times because that's how straightforward and honest they are. Maggie Haberman is tweeting, well, yes, Obama did some of those things, but he never called us enemies of the people. He never, it's like sticks and stones, lady. Really, this is insane. So anyway, they brought him back. So just remember he's out there. And meanwhile, again, talking to my pal David French over at National Review, talking to Ben Sass, remember, there's only two parties and the other party no longer stands for the Constitution. They were out there. Unbelievable, the stuff they had during this Kavanaugh hearing. They brought in the children from that Parkland shooting. They brought them. Why are children sitting there? They were sitting there complaining that, evil, Brett Kavanaugh was not going to overturn the Second Amendment, because they want legislation from the bench. So I just have to play this one cut of David Hogg. Michael Moore was holding a rally for his new film. Is that what it was for? Is in Canada, okay? And David Hogg, same guy, survivor from the shooting, gets up to make this speech. This is a wonderful speech. Just remember, throughout this, he's in Canada, okay?
I have a question for you guys. Who's ready to save America? Who's ready to make America the country that we say it is on paper and make it the actual country that it wants to be? I think it's the most important thing to realize, however, is the problems that we face as a country. Whether it be water in Flint, Michigan, or the amount of mass incarceration of people of color that can't vote. In Florida, the amount of eligible African Americans that would otherwise be eligible to vote that can't because of a previous conviction is 21%. In Kentucky, it's 26%. In Mississippi and Alabama, it's 15 to 16%. These are people of color that have been historically discriminated against and still are to this day and have their voting rights taken away. It's exactly. Turn that shame into your vote. If you're not Canadian.
All right. So Canada is going to invade. So we should move. I've always felt Trump should build another wall on our northern border to keep those people out. It's unbelievable. I only play that to make fun of him, but I only play it actually to make fun of the Democrats for bringing kids to this Kavanaugh hearing to talk about the Supreme Court. And let's listen to Kamala Harris, who is doing a better job than Cory Booker of running for president during this hearing. That's what they're both doing. Kamala Harris and Cory Booker are both running for president in these hearings. But Kamala Harris is doing a better job of it. She actually looks a little bit more statesman-like and a little bit more intelligent than Cory Booker, which isn't hard because Cory Booker just was not built for this. I mean, really, when you come in to the Senate, they hand you a little booklet, and rule number 4 on the booklet is never compare yourself to Spartacus, okay? That's the thing. So he didn't even read the little booklet. But Kamala Harris starts to challenge Brett Kavanaugh on the concept of unenumerated rights, okay? Rights that are not in the Constitution, and what the Supreme Court has said they are. And when listen to the way she refers to the Constitution, it's all worn and tattered, that Kavanaugh carries around in his pocket. He carries it around because he reads it all the time. He's clearly worn to the edges. Listen to what Kamala Harris says.
So unenumerated rights is a phrase that lawyers use, but I want to make clear what we're talking about. It means rights that are protected by the Constitution, even if they're not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. Right. So they're not in that book that you carry. So what we're talking about is the right to vote. That's an unenumerated right. The right to have children, the right to control the upbringing of your children, the right to refuse medical care, the right to love the partner of your choice, the right to marry, and the right to have an abortion. Now, putting those unenumerated rights in the context of the statement you made, which was to praise the stemming of the general tide of freewheeling creation of unenumerated rights, which means the interpretation there is you were praising the quest to end those unenumerated rights. My question to you is, which of the rights that I just mentioned do you want to put an end to or roll back?
3 points, I believe, Senator. First, the Constitution. It is in the book that I carry. The Constitution protects unenumerated rights.
Now, the book that little bit reminds me of Piers Morgan talking to Ben, like that, your little book, I'd throw your little book in your face. He's talking about the law. That's a senator talking about the law of the land, that little book you carry. That is the Democrats. And by the way, the thing about unenumerated rights, I believe there are unenumerated rights guaranteed by the Constitution. But what the Constitution does is it enumerates powers. It enumerates powers that the federal government has, and what is not enumerated in the Constitution, the federal government cannot do. This is why many of the founders said we don't want a First Amendment protecting free speech, because the Constitution gives no power to the federal government to regulate speech. And therefore, to say that you can't make a law against free speech is to double talk. It is to say, basically, that you do have this power unless we take it away from you. But the idea of the Constitution was supposed to enumerate powers. So my objection to, for instance, the unenumerated right to marry who you want is that the federal government has no right to make any laws about marriage. It hasn't got the right to take your marriage away. It hasn't got the right to make marriages. I mean, if the state can say it wants the marriages to be what it was, as I read last week in Scalia's dissent, that the state can make laws. When the Supreme Court is pretending to give you rights, it is always actually taking away your right to govern yourself. In the New York Times today, on Knucklehead Row, and we're not going to play the song because we're running out of time and I want to get to Knowles, but there is a piece on Knucklehead Row from a guy named Jedediah Purdy, a professor at law at Duke. And he says, how can progressives take back the Constitution? So I read that with interest. I thought, yes, how can progressives take back the Constitution since everything they want is unconstitutional? So he has a list of the way you take back the Constitution. So the centerpiece, he says, should be how progressives take back the Constitution should be a constitutionalism of strong democracy, fighting against the vote suppression efforts of a Republican Party and letting former felons, incarcerated people, vote. So he wants former felons to vote, even though that has nothing to do with the Constitution, but he wants that's going to be their constitutional the way the progressives reclaim the Constitution. Second, he says, progressive candidates and activists are pressing for a new conception of economic citizenship. Third, constitutionalism of just criminal justice. Activists are raising a new generation of questions about policing and the prison system. Who gets stopped? The system of money bail that keeps arrestees locked up simply because they cannot raise the cash to get out. Every political movement has its constitutional visions, from Great Society liberalism to Reaganite economic libertarianism and cultural conservatism. The work now is to define a jurisprudence of economic citizenship, strong democracy, and inclusive justice that will help a resurgent left reclaim the Constitution. But the problem is, none of that is in the Constitution. None of it is in the Constitution. So he wants to reclaim constitutionalism by using the word. That little book that you carry can say anything we want. It's a living document. That little book that you carry, it's a living document. So since it's living, let it run away and stop bothering people while we make the laws that we want to make. There are only two parties, folks, only two parties. And if the party that is out of power gets back into power, it's going to be Barack Obama times 10. The investigations, the giveaways, the blocking of Trump's agenda. If that's what you want, then keep your shoes off. Keep your shoes off, because if you don't put on your shoes, you lose. And that's really what they're doing. They're just trying to gin up the base. The New York Times is simply the Democrat spokesperson. That's all they are. They're the Democrat bullhorn. And the rest, and the networks as well. They're Democrat bullhorns meant to gin up the base while you get complacent and stay home.